Please, Mr. Lender, I want this property so bad. I promise I can afford it, and I promise I will pay the mortgage. Your debt to income is too high. I'm sorry. You can't afford this property. What the heck do you mean? I own 4 businesses and make a couple $100,000 a year. Yeah, I'm looking at your tax return and it says you don't make any money. Bro, have you ever heard of depreciation? Come on. Yeah, I'm sorry. Wait, I need my glasses on. I just can't give you a loan. So if you've ever tried to buy real estate the normal way, it probably looks a lot like that. Enter in the Morby method strategy. It is an amazing wealth building tool, and you're gonna find out that it is gonna be night and day from the qualification process of what you're traditionally used to seeing. It's so much easier to get an investment loan in a DSCR product. What is a Morby method? A Morby method is when you are purchasing a property and you're doing it creatively, and the end result is a mix between you getting a loan, as you would traditionally, and seller financing. So how that actually occurs is you have 2 transactions. You have transaction 1, where you are purchasing the property using a DSCR loan. DSCR loan stands for debt service coverage ratio. Basically, you're getting a loan based on the property performance itself. And what the lender is typically looking for is a DSCR ratio above 1. Now, there are lenders that will go below 1, but honestly, you should probably slap yourself if you're buying a property with a DSCR ratio below 1, because that means you're losing money. So a 1 ratio means the rental income is at the same exact level as your PITI. So you're breaking even. And the DSCR doesn't include things that actually happen, like property management, CapEx, lawn care, like any other things that come up, right? Vacancies. It doesn't usually include that. So you really should be questioning yourself if you're buying a property below a DSCR of 1. Typically, lenders want to see a DSCR of 1.2. The higher the number, the better. That means that you have more income coming in than money coming out in your PITI. So the greater that number, the better off you are. And you are coming to close with those funds for the remaining amount of the purchase. So let's say you get a loan for 75% LTV, you or your partner has to bring that 25% plus closing cost to the table to close on the loan. That is a normal real estate transaction. So everyone should understand what that looks like. Nothing creative. You're purchasing the property basically in a conventional way, but you're getting a DSCR loan. Okay, so the second transaction, which is usually occurring on or about the same time, that is where the seller financing kicks in. So the seller has agreed to provide financing, right, for the purchase of that property. You've already purchased the property and you've already brought 100% of funds to close. So what happens is title will hold back a portion of the seller's proceeds, and that portion that you've agreed upon for that seller financing amount is actually going to come back to you in the second transaction. And when you receive the cash, that cash is essentially reimbursing you or reimbursing your partner for that equity that you brought into the first transaction. And that is what creates that seller finance obligation, where you now owe the seller that money based upon the agreed upon terms. So in terms of DSCR loan requirements, outside of the DSCR, which is the property performance of itself, you really have 1 requirement, and that's your credit score. If your credit score is usually above 640, now some lenders may have 660 as their minimum requirement. Whatever your credit score is, if it's above that minimum requirement per that lender, that's all you need. They're gonna run your credit, and you're going to be the loan guarantor, the loan sponsor. You're going to be the one who's personally guaranteeing that loan. That's it. Everything else, they're underwriting the property. So it's so much easier to qualify for an investment property loan under a DSCR. So forget about
that conventional stuff. This is a much better way to buy properties if you're going to get a loan.
Wait, bro. So you're telling me I can go buy that property after all? Oh, heck yeah. I'm going to call that lender right now and tell that lender to pound sand. Whoa, wait. Let me explain it first. You need to fully understand all the pieces before you go and do that.
So let's get into the dirty little secrets, the things that people don't want to talk about, right? What is it in a traditional Morby method that makes it a gray area strategy, the way it's traditionally done, is the fact that in the first initial purchase, remember we were talking about that just a few minutes ago, you're purchasing the property with a DSCR loan and you have to bring funds to close, right? Then you have the second transaction. In a traditional Morby method, you're essentially asking the title company to do an escrow holdback. And you're basically, in a roundabout way, asking the title company to omit that information from the lender. Because what's happening is you're closing on the purchase. On the settlement statement, there's this escrow holdback. And in the second transaction, there's a release of the escrow holdback. The lender isn't seeing that listed on the settlement statement because you have a buyer settlement statement, and then you have a seller settlement statement, and then a settlement statement that may or may not be crafted for the lender specifically, a closing statement. And so those three different statements, or two, depending on the title company, could look different and be presented differently. So you're putting the title company in a situation where they are admitting the fact that there is a second transaction that is affiliated with it, and it's listed on the buyer's HUD as escrow holdback. It can't get any more affiliated than that, right? So that's one thing about the Morby method traditionally, the way it has been done by a lot of people, that I don't practice. The second thing that usually happens in a Morby method is you're not disclosing to the lender at all what you're doing. And a lot of times you're not getting the actual mortgage documents until you get to the closing table. So you don't even really know in their terms if they allow second positions or not, because you're not having that conversation on the front end. You're asking your typical loan requirement questions, but you're not asking that question, because as soon as you ask the lender, hey, do you allow second positions? Red flag, they're going to be wondering, why are you asking this? And if their answer is no, you know that you've killed that relationship with that lender and you're going to have to go find another lender. So a lot of people, what they'll do is they just won't ask the question, and then they'll just close without disclosing that information to the lender. So we've now have decided to not disclose that information to the lender. And what we do in the equity bridge method is all about disclosure. And so after closing, what your title company will end up doing, assuming you're getting title insurance, is they're going to record the second lien position, which I'm assuming that's how you're choosing to secure the seller at the time of closing, right? So if your lender is turning around and selling the note and they're marketing it as a note that is first position only with no junior positions on the loan, that's not true, because what you've done is you've recorded a second position at the time of closing. So you have a couple of different issues with this traditional Morby method, and it all stems honestly around disclosure and transparency to all parties involved. All right, so let's get into the equity bridge method and how it differs from a traditional Morby method. Disclosure. And in case you're wondering what's the last one, it's disclosure. So how this differs is you're going to find a lender that allows second positions, and you're going to be transparent about this conversation on the front end. They will know that you are entering into a transaction in which you're purchasing the property with a DSCR loan with the intention of securing the seller on the back end, whether that be through the LLC or in second position. So you have to find a lender that is okay with second positions, and they are out there. But the key part is disclosure, okay? The second thing that makes the equity bridge method different is we are closing on the purchase of the property. There is no escrow holdback, because what we're doing is we are fully closing on the transaction, and the seller financing portion is completely separate. What we want to do is really separate the the two transactions, we have transaction 1, which is the purchase. Transaction 2 is what we call a refinance. So what we're actually doing is a cash out refinance. This is a concept that really resonates well with agents and also title companies. So think of it this way. Let's say you purchase your property, your primary residence, and then later you decide to refinance your equity out in the form of a HELOC, right? Everyone's heard of a HELOC. That's essentially what we're doing here. You brought the funds to close, or your partner did, on the purchase of the property. So you're refinancing your equity out with a cash out refi, right? You're taking a portion of your equity that you put in and refinancing it out of the transaction, completely separate from the initial purchase and the initial loan that you got from the purchase of that property. Two separate transactions. There is no escrow holdback. You're purchasing the property. You don't see it on the HUD anywhere. Those funds are then transferred into a second transaction, and that's through an affidavit that basically states exactly what's happening in that refinance transaction. So when you close on that purchase of the property, instead of the title company doing escrow holdback and transferring it to the second transaction and closing on it on the same day, and then also recording the second lien position on the same day, fun fact for you, no title company is going to hold the recording of a lien for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. They're just not going to do it. If they're going to close on a loan and they're going to provide title insurance, they're going to do it at the same time. You will never find a title company that will not do it other than that. So what we're doing here, instead of having all of that happen, you have an attorney involved in the second transaction. A portion of the seller proceeds, which is the portion that you've agreed upon for the seller financing amount, is transferred to an escrow account, which an attorney is holding access to. So once that attorney has the funds, they are the ones in charge of releasing those funds back to the buyer, which creates the cash out refinance. They're distributing the proceeds to the buyer, and they are the ones recording any secondary position, which is all above board and disclosed to the lender. And the attorney has the flexibility to record that 3 months later, 4 months later, 5 months later, 6 months later, whatever the terms dictate, right? So if the lender is okay with second positions, but they come back and disclose that, hey, we're okay with second positions, but you need to wait 3 months or you need to wait 6 months, then that is a obligation that you now have to carry if you want to do it correctly. So the attorney will be able to structure that for you and then do it in the 3 months or 6 months or whatever is required. So the attorney is the one releasing the funds. You have the title company out of that transaction. You also have the extra protection of a licensed attorney involved, which adds to the legitimacy of the transaction. Now they're risking their license, so they are going to be the ones that really want to make sure this is done above board and it's done legally. And in this method, we are still disclosing this to the title company. Everybody knows what's going on. The seller knows, the title company knows that the attorney's involved in a second transaction and that's where the proceeds are going. The lender knows and they're okay with second positions, and we're going to record everything with the attorney's help. They're going to draft the promissory note, they're going to draft the lien, and then we're going to record it appropriately. Everybody that is involved has the appropriate disclosures of what's going on, and that's the key to this transaction, disclosures. So we've removed the risk that comes with traditional Morby methods by not having an escrow holdback, by actually disclosing it to the lender, removing liability from the title company by having to do an escrow holdback, which they now love a lot more, right? Anytime they can reduce liability, they're going to be all for it. And then recording any junior liens in the appropriate timeline that the lender is okay with. So the equity bridge method is so much better, and in my opinion is much more scalable than doing a traditional Morby method, which is a little bit of a gray area. So hopefully you understand now that this is a very complex method, and you really want to make sure you partner with someone that actually knows what they're doing and having an attorney involved is definitely a great start to doing that. So if you got any questions, do me a favor, go ahead and drop that in the comments. I really want to hear what wasn't clear to you in this video, so that way I can improve that delivery in future videos. And then also, bro, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet,
Guy, YouTube.
subscribe to my YouTube.
I can't see YouTube.
All right, have you subscribed yet? No? Maybe you need to hear it again from another cute little one. Say subscribe
Subscribe
to
to my YouTube.
Okay, if that doesn't make you subscribe to my channel, I give up. See you next time.